Bum 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 bum. I've tricked you both. We are not starting with the normal intro, because to get around our completely made up rules, we're going to be chatting about what you actually do, Grigori, here before even the intro plays.
What are we chatting about? You didn't even introduce me yet.
They read the title. They can read, hopefully.
Okay.
No, the problem is you just don't matter.
That's true. But then having someone on your show that doesn't matter as a guest does imply that possibly you don't matter.
I mean, we had to kidnap our last guest.
We've been replaced.
Just to be clear, I wasn't aiming that towards you, tstaffor. That was entirely for Aiko.
Getting out scotch-free. Anyway, you do a podcast, and you're Grigori Karpin, SCP writer.
Yeah, I do those things. Yeah, I do have a podcast with Harry Blank, Simply Creative People, where we talk about, like, deep dives. Right now we're doing all sorts of groups of interests, but eventually we'll do more, like, broad subjects. But I figured groups of interest would be a good way to kind of, you know, if somebody wanted to binge all the episodes, they could get a good grip on what the site is all about. Because I've talked to a lot of people that were, like, new fans or people that I wanted to introduce to my writing, and they were like, what is this? And it's so intimidating because there's so many things. And so the idea has always been to, talk about, like, if we were talking about sarcasm or, you know, the GOC, then we could talk about, 5 to 8 articles that we think really, embodies why these things are cool. And then usually we make fun of each other a lot.
And I also mention this because in the past 2 episodes in a row, both Aiko and I have guest starred for
That's right.
the Onoroi Collective and the Parawatch Wiki.
And by the way, we're such a better, more organized podcast than that other one. I mean, like, you can watch it just so you can know how right I am.
Yeah, I definitely didn't just put together the show outline in a Discord message 5 minutes before starting the podcast. We're very organized.
We know what we're doing, quite frankly.
You don't need
we
that.
We know so many things. We don't need outlines. When we get our guests on, we say, hey, you want to be on a fun pod? And then we just go record. We hit record.
That's right. You told me 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, we just randomly found Grigori in a voice chat, and we jumped in here, and we said, be on our podcast.
You want to talk about the podcast that you might be on? And then he got in, and we just said, all right, hit record, go.
Speaking of our podcast, we're going to run away for 15 seconds while some intro music plays, and then pretend none of this happened. 1, 2,
3, 4. You and me should take a trip across the galaxy and feel the waves of our own energy.
Hello and welcome to the Skip Squad podcast, where we don't care about what you write, we care about what you love. I'm tstaffor.
And my name is Luxaiko.
And today we have a very special guest. It's going to be a great surprise, because no one's even heard of this guest before this. No one knows who this is. It's
Grigori Karpin.
Wow. And you don't do anything related to SCP, right?
No, definitely not. I definitely don't do any writing or podcasting at all. I mean, that's definitely not why I came on the podcast, to potentially, plug other stuff that I do. That
No.
Definitely did not.
And at the end of
happen.
this podcast, there is no plugging allowed. We're not going to be plugging anything.
Great. Thank God.
This is my second cousin's dog's past owner's father.
That would make me a dog.
No.
No, it's in
dog.
past owner.
Oh, I'm the father
Jeez.
of the past owner. I see.
Could you
Yeah.
listen, bro?
Bruh, could you listen? Bruh.
Grigori, could you, listen? Oh my god. I'm trying to bring an intro to the podcast. Shut up!
Wow.
Sorry. That was my sister.
I see that you are your own worst enemy, because that has to be so much fun to edit what just happened.
Oh, everything is really fun to edit. It doesn't take me 12 hours to edit a 1-hour podcast. No.
I don't touch any of it.
No, you don't. You really don't. You just come in here. I have to wrangle you in here. And I have to wrangle a guest in. And then you just yell at the guest and abuse them for an hour. And then I edit all of that out.
Well, I mean, if she regularly gets locked in the bathroom from her own doing, then, I think that's perfectly natural for her to be slightly upset.
Oh,
Yeah,
don't bring that
Aiko,
up.
do you want to tell us the story about why we're starting this 5 minutes
I was
later than we planned?
35 seconds late to the podcast.
You
That's
were.
a lot in tstaffor. That's 35 beatings. I
You
have to
were
endure.
very, very late.
Yeah.
That's too many seconds.
So I'm doing spring cleaning because I'm moving soon, and I found a lock, and my bathroom door has a little lock section on it, and I put the lock on it, and I forgot the combination, and I was stuck in there for an hour, by the way, and then the podcast was starting, so I was like, God, so I had to crawl out the window. It's only on the first story, it's fine. Crawl out the window, run around the house, get back in through the back door, and get onto my computer.
Left your family without a bathroom until they
It's
get,
my
like,
bathroom.
lock cutters?
Like, my room has one.
So just to be clear,
so it's fine.
the lock is on the inside, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to crawl back in the window.
You are? Oh, I didn't even think about that. You have to go back through a window.
Don't laugh at me.
Oh, no, it's too late.
I'm most vulnerable.
Oh, goodness. And I think we also need to talk about the fact that when you got on mic, you were literally out of breath. And the excuse...
From climbing through a window.
The excuse you tried to give was, I had to run really far. I ran from the other side of the house, which was the most ridiculous...
My house is really long.
My house is a football field, apparently.
Listen, I didn't want to start with, sorry, I was locked in my bathroom. That just sounds sad.
So wait, just to be clear, when you were on my show, I made fun of you and you complained that your mother would listen to it. Does your mother listen to this one? Can she see the fact that I just consistently upset you?
No, she's not going to see this one. She doesn't listen to this podcast.
Yeah, we hide this from everyone. We don't actually, allow anyone to listen to this one. We're too self-conscious.
no.
I'm so glad I came home to make sure I was on it then.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
It's just a hangout, really.
Yeah, no, we're not. The article part was useless. And by article part, I mean go on tstaffor?
By article part, you mean all the podcasts, which is this. And you don't write for this wiki at all. None of that sort. But you do really enjoy reading it. What do you
That's right. I've never written anything for the wiki ever.
God, this is a shot in the ego for this guy.
It just stripped you of any of your pride.
Always
now
wanted to
tell
be
us
a
about
writer.
stuff you like.
Yeah, I always wished that I could write stuff for other people to read, but I don't know. I don't know if I should.
And then you lost your hands.
That's right.
In the incident.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. The incident that you caused.
Yeah, I took a bat to the fingers.
Why a bat? That sounds so much worse than I was thinking.
That is really difficult to sever a finger with a bat.
Just really brutal.
I didn't sever them. No, I just beat his hands into a bloody pulp over and over. Yeah, it took a few hits, but he's fine.
Oh yeah, I'm fine. We established my hands are apparently gone, but I'm fine.
I mean, yeah, aside from that part, nothing's damaged.
Aside from that part, yes. Now there's doors opening.
No, I can mute my side.
No, that's just the ghost in the recording studio.
No doors happened. You didn't hear anything.
I went around my room
doors.
and closed all the windows so there wouldn't be any noise. I set up my microphone, and you guys are just I got locked in a bathroom right when I should have been recording. And
Great, our podcast is so much more chaotic than yours. You can't say this to us.
I've recorded in separate different garages 3 out of 4 of these episodes in garages.
How many garages do you have access to?
They break into houses.
I've been moving.
Oh.
I've gone to 4 different places for every single different episode.
I like to think
I haven't recorded 2 episodes in a row in the same place.
You should have just said you broke into houses. It would have been funnier.
Yeah, or you get in the garage of every guest episode, so it's not even that we have guests, it's just that you need to return the favor for them lending you the space. Hey, thanks for letting me borrow your garage. You want to come on?
That's how I get places to live. Every 2 weeks, I have to find a new SCP writer. No, never mind. They don't write anything.
No, I definitely don't write anything. You've never heard of me before.
Someone to crash at their house, and in exchange, I talked to them for an hour. Anyway, tell us about stuff you like. I'm sick of all this intro garbage.
Small talk is useless on a podcast. Wait, am I supposed to say? Okay, fine. Okay, my first article that I like on someone else's podcast, let me just take over, is...
What? We're going to have you come on and we're just going to tell you about all of our
anyways, we're going to sit back now. Can you just start talking? Yeah,
Wait, so are you just going to interject? What's the structure here?
Oh, some guy didn't do his research, didn't listen to all of our podcasts, which you can find on YouTube.
You just said you hide them all.
Something.
Aiko won't even give me a link to listen to the other ones.
No, we don't release them. We went
I
over
promise
this.
we're better hosts than this. He just didn't read the gist.
We're just not going to get to SCPs.
I'm-
We're just going to bully you for an hour and not actually talk about any SCPs.
Okay, but I did read the gist, so I'm joking. So, SCP-5525 is one of the first ones I said I liked a lot. Am I just, like, describing... Is this just... Is this just my podcast?
We give you the floor, and then we talk about it after.
And then we pull it away. We drop you. We give you a floor, and then we drop you down into a pit full of crocodiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one is called The U.S. Government Loots Atlantis, which is the most phenomenally direct title I have seen on the wiki. And it's by Greenwolf, who is sort of inherently part of Third Law, as one of the main people that's behind Third Law. There's a few other people behind it, but it's kind of Greenwolf's baby in a lot of ways. And
Also astounding author.
yeah, there's a few other authors, but like this is the one that I mostly have interacted with. And we read this on my podcast because it's a really good like GOC article, and I just thought, and I hadn't read it before like 3 months ago, and I just think it's fucking amazing. It's so funny, even though it's not a comedy article, because it starts off being this, okay, there's an anomalous underwater civilization, and yep, it's totally Atlantis, and they have advanced technology and all sorts of other crazy shit. But that's all background, because the entire point of the article is that the U.S. government is like looting it and like trying to like take it over through the Navy, and the SCP Foundation and the GOC are both like joined together to try and stop this from happening, and it becomes a magical naval battle. It's almost like that movie Battleship, only with magic.
So I completely just ignored and didn't hear
Great.
anything that you
Excellent.
just said, because right at the start you said you had read this on your podcast, and I'm just very confused by that.
Cool. Yeah.
Because
I have a podcast that I also don't share with anyone, and it's just, you know, it's
that
just something
makes
I like to do. It's kind of simple and creative, and it has people on it, but
yeah.
It's
That
not
being
even.
said,
It's
shout
not
out
even
to your
his.
podcast.
It's not even
'cause
mine.
This is how
That's true.
that's how I found
It's Harry
this
Ganks. I mean Harry
article.
Blanks. This was a really good article, and it's actually one of the ones that, you know, the name trope. This is stupid to bring up, but I love the namings on articles, and this was especially one of my favorites that I love seeing people do it, because I'll always read them and I'll be like, haha, yeah, that's pretty funny, but like obviously there's more, and then you open it and that's it.
what
Like
it's
that's
about.
just what
Yep.
it is. It's amazing. It sounds so bland. It's like someone's just pitched their idea to
Right.
you, and you're sitting there thinking, how are you gonna make that work, right? Like, that's ridiculous. And then they give you a draft, and you're like, Jesus Christ, yeah.
I just love titles where after telling someone the title of it, you feel the need to clarify, and that's the title. That's not my description. That's the title.
no, that is good. That is genuinely good, because it sounds like you're describing what happens. You're like, no, that's the title. It's like an action movie. Like it's so funny because, like you said, it seems like, oh, this is really what it's about. Like you just told me what it's about in the title, and I don't need to read any further. But if you bothered to keep reading just a little bit, you're gonna get like a full-on big budget action movie on the wiki, with ridiculous shit like psychic attacks between different battleships and like people like. I can't remember what Third Law describes teleporting, but they call it like apparition, I think it's how you say it. And people teleporting from ship to ship and doing assassinations and like firing crazy cannons at each other, to the point where they utilize some secret Atlantean weapon, the Foundation does, to eradicate the entire Navy. Not the entire US Navy, but like this whole fleet. To the point where like it never existed. And the U.S. government eventually gets over itself and kind of makes a treaty with the Foundation and with GOC, but they never acknowledged this fleet existed, and everyone just pretends like it was never there, which is, I think, hilarious, because it's not like a building that the Foundation made disappear or a person that they changed their memories. This is a fucking fleet, like hundreds of boats, billions of dollars spent. No, just gone now.
Greenwolf could tell me that this was like a D&D session that he just wrote out, and I would believe it.
Yeah, that wouldn't be insane.
There's got to be some D&D session SCPs at this point that are just like people did a role play and they were like, I'm going to write this into an article.
Yeah, that probably is true.
Then you have to explain it, you know, and you're like, oh yeah, let me put this into sci-fi terms, I guess.
Sci-fi? At the exact same time we both freaked out about it.
I realized for a second I was thinking like fleets, and I was like, sci-fi. No, but then I was thinking foundation, and all I think of is science. Anyways,
I'm just gonna let this pause just go and go.
Listen, I think it stands for science fiction, doesn't it?
Sci-fi
Yes.
does. Sci-fi. There's no sky.
So the reason that you said sci-fi is because you thought of the word science, which is actually what sci stands for? And that made you think sky?
I am looking down in shame.
I'm sorry.
That is the one time my pronunciation sucked.
No, it's like throughout the last episode you were on of my show, it would also suck. But I'm just kidding. But I really like that you ended that with, and I feel like we talked over it, that you were like, I'm looking down and I'm sighing because it's also sci-fi.
Now, I have to say, this is very big of you coming from someone who has mispronounced both of our names on your podcast.
Well, you know, Aiko, I'm always doing it on purpose. That's not true, but I like to pretend it's true. How do I pronounce your name?
I really can't remember at this point, but I think you had like a debate when you had mentioned Bubbly Bobby in the Wondertainment episode. You had a debate about how to pronounce my name, and I can't remember if it was you or one of the others, but someone said tstaffor.
I did. With an
S?
S? No, that wasn't me. Although,
yeah,
I remember.
Although I do get kind
did.
of like, I get trip over my words sometimes and then don't edit it out.
Oh, I do too. Or I mean, I never do. I definitely don't have to spend 12 hours editing all of them out.
But it's just tstaffor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But you don't try to pronounce it like tstaffor or something like that, right? Oh, yeah.
No,
That's
just
what it was.
tstaffor.
It was tstaffor. What the hell?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
A lot of people do that.
Hey, you know what? Maybe if some of you motherfuckers would have made, like, usernames that were actually names, like, I think it's hilarious if someone gets my name wrong. That's, like, hilarious. People have been like, it's Gregory, right? I'm like, no, why wouldn't it be spelled like Gregory?
Because some mothers like to be so excessive when naming their children. They're
Oh,
like,
you think my
"I will
mother
name her
gave me this
Kayla."
name? That's not... These aren't real names. Oh, God. Is that your name?
Your guys' name isn't...
That's what you were
names
born?
are-
You were born as Luxaiko? Wow.
Luxaiko.
I was born tstaffor, but I really didn't like it, so I changed it to tstaffor.
Good.
Too many S's anyway.
Way too many S's. Are you eating?
No, I'm actually tearing things apart.
Why would you do that in front of the microphone?
I'm not! Also, I was doing it mindlessly. I'm sorry. I fixed all my audio for tstaffor before sending it to them, so they don't have to deal with stuff like that.
Well,
Grigori calling us out here. We can't even edit out all of these terrible
Can't
audio
even make
things.
my
He's just
my
calling us
funny
out.
noises. Oh my god, this guy.
I mean,
I want him gone.
yeah. I should go.
Just
We've covered one
move
of
on
my
to the
five.
next one, man.
Oh,
Just move on.
speaking of pronunciation,
You gonna tell me you don't know how to pronounce this?
I think I do.
It's Thalassomania.
Okay, that's not what I was gonna go with. But you know, I didn't take a lot of science when I was in undergrad or in high school. I was mostly history and what are those other ones called? The liberties? No. Yeah, social sciences.
Libraries.
No, not libraries.
You mean? Wait a second. That's
Literature
Harry's whole
stuff.
thing, and you're gonna tell me you don't know it?
No. Libraries and literature and whatever. Anyway, liberal arts. I was mostly focused on the liberal arts. But, yeah, Thalassomania is how I would have said it. But, yeah, that's SCP-4246, Thalassomania, or The Dreams of the Firstborn by Metaphysician, who is my absolute...
Good old meta.
Yeah.
We're actually not big on meta on this podcast. We're all Pepper Ghost fans.
Yeah, this is a Pepper Ghost fan cast.
We can be both. Like, what?
No. Unfortunately, that's just.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
All right. Well, that's too
Jeez.
bad because I'm right, and Metaphysician is a great author, and is the entire reason why I feel like you and I started talking.
Metaphysician has such an amazing they're one of the only authors, I think, on this whole site that I can really suss out and realize an article is written by them. This one, I didn't actually know the author of it when you linked it for the stuff you liked. And halfway through, I was like, this is 100% by Metaphysician.
Oh, so I feel like there are a few that you can really tell. I feel like Famine. I think I would be able to tell a Famine article. If you didn't tell me who wrote it, I don't know. I like to think I have kind of a voice. Anyway. Thalassomania is... How to summarize this without just, like, going down a plot point? It's the discussion of a series of, like... Also, this is funny. It's also about underwater ruins, which was unintentional when bringing up right after the government loots Atlantis. That's pretty funny.
Grigori loves water. Loves water so much.
Actually, sort of do. That's true. But this is about a series of sort of underwater ruins in the ocean that represent what seems to be a fairly advanced society, and is kind of all over the place. There's also some like psychic emanations that are coming off of some of these things that are, reaching into the dreams of certain sensitive humans all over the world. And it starts off as just an investigation into what are these dreams by the Foundation, obviously, to figure out, is this an anomaly or is this just kind of one of those, repeating dreams that are culturally noticeable or whatever.
Everyone seems to be waking up and having this weird dream where they're standing in their classroom and then they don't have any clothes.
Do you know I've never had that dream?
This is a big SCP.
I've never had that.
Yeah, that's never been an issue for me. None of the ones that are considered common I've ever had.
I have totally had the one where I have showed up to class and I have a test and I didn't study. I've totally had that one. Or variations on that one. But this one is much more like being underwater in ancient ruins type of dreams, which I've never had, which I would totally have. That sounds great. But the interesting thing about this article is that it is kind of, I would say, it's like this really excellent attempt to sort of, I don't know if Meta intended this, but I feel like it's like a much better version of Eldritch horror, like the way that Lovecraft and other people like him would write about, ancient societies that were now under the waves and lost in the depths. And this is that, but without all the racism.
It takes like these two big turns that are super interesting. Yeah. It's a very long article, but it keeps you really focused with it because it kind of moves from ideas. Because like you said, it starts out with researching just these dreams people are having, and that's the SCP.
And it's evocative, like just... the dreams, it's not just like a dream sequence. It has this, Meta did a really good job of making it feel very otherworldly. Even though the dreams are totally, like you read about them being described and you go, okay, I can imagine this. But there's a real feeling of like otherworldliness about them.
And then it flows really well, very seamlessly into, now it's actually about these beacons that are causing this. And there are like 3 different beacons, or there's a lot more, but there's 3 focused ones around the ocean floor that are causing this in humans and stuff. And then it takes another turn.
The turn at the end is, and I don't know if we want to spoil it or not, but the turn at the end is, I remember reading it and like getting up and wanting to start clapping to myself. Like I was just so impressed with the twist. And I don't really fall for twists typically, not even in SCP articles. I'm not saying I always guess them ahead of time. I just mean sometimes they happen and I go, oh, that's clever. Okay, moving on. Because most of the time I don't really enjoy writing that relies on that kind of twist. And this article doesn't feel like that at all. It doesn't feel like it's going to lead to a twist at all. It just seems to be, like you said, cataloging the dreams and how weird and cool and spooky they are. And then cataloging these beacons, which, oh goodness, there's a society that used to live underwater, and maybe it's like some weird, fish alien things that, used to like cover the entire planet, and it's, what happened to them, and it's describing some of the architecture, and it feels so otherworldly. And by the end, you're totally convinced. Like, I'm totally sold on this society and the spooky, and that would have been enough. And then he throws in that twist, and it's like, oh, like, it feels like I'm having a stroke. Like, the first time I was just blown away. Like, it makes you rethink the entire article leading up to it. And you're just like, oh my God. And I love it.
It's, again, such a great benefit of it being written by Metaphysician, because Metaphysician is so good at just that very, like, traditional world building. It goes hard into traditional world building, building you up to just being, okay, this is a cool world building piece, and then that twist just turns it on its head.
Yeah, what you call world building, I think that's totally right. I'm not disagreeing, but like the thing that I always liked about Meta that I don't think I could ever recreate, and a lot of people can't, even though they try. I don't try, just because I have a different style. But his articles, and this is going to sound like an insult, and it's not, because he's my friend, and I also really, really like his writing. His stuff reads like a very well-written history book. Talking about these like cultures or societies or, events in this way that makes it feel very real. He regularly finds really old pictures that, probably are in the public domain or something, and they're just some guy in a bow tie, and yet it fits so good. It sets this is Joseph Adler, leader of the Hermetic Order of Universal Wisdom. And it's like,
I definitely sometimes fall into a rabbit hole of trying to get that perfect picture for an article.
Oh yeah, me too.
Where I want this very specific thing. But sometimes you can, with the writing around it, make a very generic, just picture of a guy be a very specific thing.
Yeah, no, totally. Especially if it evokes a setting. So, Meta and Rounderhouse and a bunch of other people will use these older pictures, and just from the way people are dressed, or just from the way that, the vehicles are in the picture or whatever, you're already evoking a time period. And so that goes a long way towards it. That's one of my favorite things about SCP, modern day SCPs. I really like the addition of images. Obviously, I put a lot of images in my articles. If I wrote them, which I don't do, of course.
Yeah. You're accompanying art for a lot of the... And I still can't think of it as victim. I've always thought of it as VKTM.
You're not alone.
Just say VKTM. Don't listen to him.
VKTM.
He's a liar.
Again, I don't have any problem with how anyone says it. I just say it like victim.
When it's TM, I guess I always thought that because I thought like VK and then TM was supposed to be like a play on like trademark.
I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah, so I never thought victim. I just thought VK.
It all kind of happened very organically because in the beginning, I just wanted something that sounded like victim. And I wanted to make a radio call sign. I don't really listen to a lot of radio nowadays, but, back in the day, because I'm old as shit, that's all we had if you were driving in a car. And so, I mean, you had tapes and CDs and shit, but whatever. My point is that it would be like, KROQ or, I don't know, Kiss FM or whatever. And I wanted something like that, where it was like, and that's what's so funny about it, is that it was meant to be like a VKTM 66.3. But it was supposed to be like, but also, if you think about it, it's their victim, And then afterwards, I was like, I'm going to turn this into a whole GUI. And then I just had to think of a name that went with those letters, because I wanted to use the same letters.
Wow.
And then I also started doing the TM thing a lot because of the TM in the name. And so it's bizarre. People are always constantly like, not always, but it's very frequent that either on Twitter or in Discords or whatever, we'll be asking these deep lore questions about victim, and I refuse to answer them. But also, they're not that deep.
That is good, because on here we refuse to ask them, because we didn't actually care about
I don't care, I care. So,
victim.
Go to hell. You said this is my show, so I'm doing whatever I want.
Yeah, except the whole point of our show is that you don't matter.
It's weird.
We don't like you,
Grigori. If I just matter,
to talk about so much better stuff and feel so terrible that you didn't write all this.
Well, that's true. All the stuff we're going to talk about is better than mine. That's 100% true.
Well, you know what it's time for? Aiko?
You're gonna struggle so hard.
I'm going to nail it first try. Thank you very much.
Please.
I can't do it. I can't
Do
bring
it now,
myself to do it.
please. Get it over with, please.
Where did you come from? Where did you go? Nope. I can't do it.
Why? Why is this happening?
I can't. Where did you come from? Where did you go? What's the first article? And your experience with Foundation.
Oh, that was...
Nailed it.
That was painful.
Finally, someone who agrees.
That was... I'm sure that was meant to be charming, but I just feel so bad for everyone involved, including myself. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That was very mean. I'm sorry.
I feel no remorse for
Good.
anything I have ever done.
Well, that looks like something you should maybe have examined. But okay, good. So if I understood that song, if we want to call it that, correctly, I'm supposed to talk...
It's a jingle.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of.
Sure. I'm supposed to talk about what inspired me on the wiki, is that right?
What's the first... Yeah. That's it.
We'll
go with that.
All right. Well, it's the same, which is funny.
This truly is the eye of the storm.
That's right, and I am the storm. So SCP-2480, which, I'm not obsessed, but is also by Metaphysician.
Yeah, absolutely obsessed.
Yeah.
This guy does not stop talking about him.
He knows I'm a big fan. It's fine. Which is the title is an unfinished ritual, which I just love so fucking much. It's so evocative, because it already tells you, okay, this is going to be something supernatural, something occult, but the idea that it's unfinished, like, does that mean that it failed, or does that mean that it's still, the results are still being felt, much later on? I don't know. It evokes a lot of stuff, and
I've never really thought about that, like that it's still.
Because it is
cascadingly unfolding. It's great.
Yeah, because if you read the article, that's exactly what's happening. Things are seemingly way worse in that town than they are, quote unquote, at the beginning when the GOC first steps in. But yeah, this was my first article, and this is also very much the inspiration for me joining the wiki. It was about 7 years ago or so, and I was on Reddit, and I can never think of what Reddit it was, but I was kind of complaining about how there wasn't a lot of new, like, eldritch or cosmic horror that wasn't the old stuff, which, as we've established, is all pretty racist. And I wanted something new. It kind of was crazy to me that something could be so popular among so many people, including myself, and that there wasn't a lot. There was Clive Barker, I feel like, has kind of touched on it a little bit, and other authors like Caitlin Kiernan, who is a really excellent woman from the South, who has written really interesting progressive sort of eldritch horror, and I really liked her stuff. But, she only wrote so much. So it was like, what else can I get? And somebody recommended, they linked me to SCP-2480. And I was just, fucking blown away. And I was like, wait,
it's nice to finally meet someone whose first experience with SCP was from Reddit. I don't think I've ever met someone else who's had that experience.
Yeah, everyone I've talked to as well finds that surprising, and I'm not sure why that's so surprising, but
I expected you to say this one, and that's because this was my number one. On our first episode, this is the one I gave, so people are very familiar with it already.
Oh yeah, I think it's officially tied with SCP-049 for having been in 3 out of 4 of the episodes so far. Been mentioned.
It's just so good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like one of those articles that it's for me, it's a must read. Like, if I ever tell someone they need to read stuff on the wiki, it's like, that's one of them. It's so damn good.
Yeah.
But for me, it also personifies a lot of sarcasm, which is my favorite GOI. And that's so important to me because I'm all about characters. And I remember when I met Grigori, he told me that. And that's what made me, think, this guy's cool. But I was also upset because I was like, it's my favorite. What the heck? I thought I was niche and cool, and I'm not niche and cool now.
There's a lot of sarcasm fans. Sorry to tell you.
I'm going to kill them all.
Oh, wow. It's very on point, I think. Yeah, I like this one a lot because it gives me a reason, once people read it, to then flip the tables on them in terms of sarcasm, because if this is your first article about sarcasm, you're like, oh my god, they're so evil. I'm like, only some of them. And then I get to explain the whole weird, brilliantly layered world building that Meta did to create, different sects and different histories and cultures that have grown up and been marginalized and developed or been appropriated by, cults in other countries. And it's just so good. And I realize some people don't like it, and that's fair, but it's my favorite thing in the world. I genuinely think it's one of my favorite things in the world.
I personally think Sarcasm has the most passionate fan base of any SCP group of interest. I've been in multiple different VCs where someone will passionately talk about their love for Sarcasm for an hour and a half to me, and I always enjoy it because it's such an interesting group.
Yeah, most of the people I know that are really into it, and that's obviously not necessarily everyone, but I've had deep conversations, in just a random public Discord, about, or on Reddit. And it's just, it's just so interesting. It's not only creepy and full of really interesting, weird, body horror and magic and stuff, but it's also culturally interesting. There's, I'll bring it up kind of later on, sort of, very briefly, but there's a whole series of articles done by different people that are anthropological studies on different groups of people that are Sarkic and their different cultural signifiers between, differing between each other. And that's nuts. This is a website that started off with a statue that had poop on it,
the poop statue website made deep lore.
Yeah, and not just lore, because people are always like, oh, Sarcasm, yeah, that's all the lore stuff. And it's there. But you could just ignore that stuff and just look at the cultural side of things, where people are actually trying to discuss cultures from an anthropological perspective. And that's why I love them, and that's why I love the Deva so much. Because they both have that kind of feeling to it. And SCP...
And that's where our differences meet.
And 2480 is it wasn't the first Sarkic article, but it was my first article. And then I was like, hey, I should write these. And then I didn't for 3 years. And then finally I did write something.
And then you didn't at all.
All right, listen, it's better not to. It needs to be good. I'm so disencouraging. No, Sarcasm is important was my point. You need to be good.
Oh, I meant writing in general. It took me a little bit long. Oh, that's not true. My second article is Sarkic.
Mine was 2. Stop making commonalities between us.
Okay, I didn't make it. It's just kind of how things happen, but sure.
I don't like this guy. Can we get him off? Where's the sass coming from, huh?
Years of trauma, mostly.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. You're full of that, aren't you?
I'm full of a lot of shit.
And full of yourself. Yeah, okay. Make the joke before me. Well, I'm done talking about 2480. Because I'm getting jealous.
What even else do you even know, Grigori?
What else do I know? Well, I know many things about many, many things. Yeah. Oh, do you mean SCPs?
Yeah, do you know anything about any 001s?
I do. And what's funny is, and I don't want anyone listening to this or you thinking that I'm just looking down my nose at them. I get why people really obsessively love different 001s. They are epic. Oh, usually they are incredibly ambitious oftentimes. But a lot of them I've kind of been lukewarm on. I don't think they're bad articles or bad writing. I just, people are obsessed with talking about the Gate Guardian or, the Factory or whatever. And but this one is amazing. And it's Kate McTiriss's proposal, 001, a record. And this seems, and it is very simple, but it's a literal record, so an LP or a vinyl, that if put into a list will automatically kind of become the first thing on a list.
It's so good. I just have to interject right here, good. Because there's a great rest of the article, but the amount I laughed at that article is more than I've laughed an article in like a year.
It's very clever.
It was the funniest thing to me because I've read so many 001s at this point. I don't think I've read all of them, but I've read a good like 30 out of the 45 that there are or something.
Yeah, I mean they're a lot of people. I mean it's when people make an 001, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think like the earlier ones I actually enjoy more than just like this is a really big project SCP, so I made it my 001. I do like the ones that are kind of trying to explain an origin story.
Oh, I do enjoy the one, like there's the one that the UIU, we talked about on an episode,
yes,
where it's the origin of the Foundation is the 001, which is really, it's very funny because it.
Yeah, where the Foundation like is just copying the UIU.
That's right, but badly.
Yes. Or the like sheaf of papers that's
that one's pretty good.
Is spawning all the anomalies. But this one, their explanation, like this SCP's explanation for why it's a 001 is just because it has to be. It can't go in any other slots. It just has to be a 001, and that's the best thing ever.
And most of the article is just like past procedures or past iterations of an article, and then they keep learning like little new things, and it's actually fairly short. A lot of 001s are very long, and this one's not.
Yeah, I saw the, like, 7 or 8 collapsibles, and they were all, like, revisions to it, and I was like, oh, boy, this is going to be a long 001.
And
then it's not.
No, it's not.
Refreshing.
It's very short, which is funny because, you know, I am absolutely a champion of long articles. I haven't written a lot of them, although I have taken part in writing the longest article. But I appreciate, you know, complicated narratives. It's just so funny to me that the 001 that I've never stopped thinking about, ever, like since I read it, and I've read it like 5 times now, because it's very short, is just, you know, 8 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you're done. Maybe even less. It's so incredibly clever that the only reason that this is an SCP, at least at first, is that if you put this object in a list, and the reason they noticed it was because of, you know, Billboard lists, which rank by popularity different records that are released in the music industry. Or at least they did. I don't know if they still do that, but
I think Billboard still does that.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure. I know it's a magazine and it has been for like all of the 20th century or a significant portion of it. And I wasn't sure if they were still around because most magazines have died. But and so the SCP Foundation figures out that, oh, this record is the reason it's always at number 1. It's not that it's such a great, amazing record. It's that it can't not be number 1. And so that's why this is SCP-001. It's not the origin of the Foundation. It's not the origin of anomalous stuff in the universe. It's not dealing with the Scarlet King or like the Garden of Eden or any big ideas whatsoever. It's just a fucking record that if you put it with other records and rank them, this one will automatically become the first one. And yet somehow, and I don't know how much we want to like give it all away because it's a very short read, but somehow this allows for the researcher to have a transformative experience, let's say.
Yeah, I think that might be good. I think it might be good to just say, this is short, it's really great, read it.
Yeah, I'll just say it's a transformative experience that the researcher goes through.
My other thing I wanted to mention about it is a nitpick I see happen with a lot of SCPs is how could the Foundation have figured this out? Yes. Which this one does a very good job at stopping that type of thing because like it's figured out just because the researcher assigned to it, she just like edits it for an April Fool's joke and then figures out more info on it and stuff, which is a good explanation on how you could just like randomly come across new info.
In the actual SCP wiki, for us as writers, as not writers, I mean,
none of us have created content.
The wiki mass edits a lot of articles during April Fools and actually changes the theme or some of the wording or the pictures, and it's a funny haha. And every time I see it get mentioned in universe in any form of canon, it's just so cute to me. Because it's like, yeah, we do it, so I bet they would too. They would probably mess around. Some researcher would be like, hey, I had a lunch break, and look, I can make the text spin. And then someone would be like, all right, that's just too big of a joke. Like, you get in trouble for that, bro.
I love that,
Bro.
like, kind of aspect of the Foundation universe it is still just kind of an office. It's just a workspace that people hang out and do funny pranks in.
Yeah, anything that makes it feel like an actual place people work in, I like. It's why I always liked Ip stuff and SNC Plastics, and why I like Harry's stuff so much, is because it feels like a real group of people that live and work around a site.
I binged SNC Plastics on a plane ride once. I just, like, downloaded all of the first, like, 2 series of it, and just, like, it's the most day-to-day, mundane work, coworker talk, but with these anomalies that they're casually dealing with, and it's just so good.
My favorite is when, like, 2 agents or researchers or whatever, and it's like big events, and then they'll stop to think about, like, what they're gonna have for lunch or dinner or something.
Yeah, in the one where they're, like, tracking down a werewolf, they just, like, are casually chatting on the drive to, like, where the werewolf was spotted and stuff.
Yeah, I love
There's an amazing show, just a quick shout out to a show, Wellington Paranormal, which is about, like, the paranormal division. It's like the UIU kind of thing, but it's a New Zealand paranormal division of the police that deal with anomalous stuff, like a ghost haunting a car, or goblins raiding a, like, random grocery store and stuff like that.
Or goblins. You know, the most normal next thing.
Anyway,
we're always so tired with whatever this guy has to say. He's putting me to sleep.
I'm yawning.
Oh my God,
Yawn.
so mean.
You're not going to escape me this time. You brought me onto yours. You said horrible things, and I couldn't argue.
Why?
Because I was scared to disrupt the flow of your podcast, and I felt extremely anxious. So now I can ruin you.
This is our show. We're allowed to ruin the flow if we want to.
You're gonna move on. You're gonna go on to the person who chose the worst username in the entire world.
Oh, yeah. So the next one is SCP-093, Red Sea Object, which is my... People always kind of give me shit because I'm not the biggest Series 1 fan.
You like a Series 1 article? A cringe.
I know. People, like, love Series 1 stuff. And I totally get why. It's nostalgic. But I don't have that nostalgia for it. Because when I started reading, Series 3 was in... Well, Series 3 was in full swing. And... it was towards the end of it, honestly, and that's what I was focused on. All the articles that I am most inspired by are in Series 3, a few in Series 2.
That's why you have 0 Series 3 articles in this list. That's good. Or no, an Unfinished Ritual.
Unfinished Ritual, yeah. But I think that there are a lot of really great modern articles, genuinely. I think that the wiki has really expanded and grown, so that's why I wanted to... I feel like everyone's going to... all these shows that people, if they go on, they're going to be like, here's my favorite things. And it's going to be like 049 and 610 and et cetera, et cetera. And those are great. I'm not saying they're not. But the one Series 1 article, the single Series 1 article that I can't ever stop thinking about is SCP-093 by NecoChris, which is, you know, not the best username, maybe. But NecoChris had, like, such a crazy influence on me without me knowing it, because I didn't know until, 6 months ago that NecoChris wrote both 093 and 610, which 610 is what inspired Sarcasm, which is crazy because both of these articles have had such an impact on me.
I thought you just said Sharkism.
Also inspired Sharkism, technically, right? Cause...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, technically. But oh my god, I was like, why would that be the first one? There's a big one.
Because SPC is like the best thing ever.
Oh my god, I didn't actually like it that much in it.
I think it's so funny.
And then I met Lord, and I loved it.
Yeah, Lord has written some really fun stuff.
Yes, an opportunity to make a Pepper's Ghost fan cast. Pepper's Ghost 001 that's about SPC is really good. We've done it.
We love Pepper's Ghost.
Pepper's Ghost. We love you. Fan cast.
Yeah, Pepper's Ghost is very talented. I agree.
Sorry, NecoChris, if you're listening.
NecoChris is not listening to this. You don't even tell me. You won't even let me listen to it.
NecoChris is our number one
NecoChris listens to the podcast.
Viewer.
Yeah. Comments on every video, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Red Sea Object, which I feel like we probably don't have to explain because people probably know, but just in case.
another ocean article. It's not ocean, but it has sea in its name.
Well, it does. That's true, because it was found
I was gonna say
on
I
the
don't
edge
get
of the
that.
Red Sea.
Yeah.
It's literally just where it was found. And it's this cinnabar disc. Cinnabar's a kind of stone that's got like different like intricate carvings on it. And when people touch it with different sorts of regrets, it changes color and then will like fling itself towards, if you let it go, towards the nearest mirror. And like hard enough that it would like go through walls or like people or cars, you know. But when it hits the mirror, it doesn't smash the mirror. And then it makes that mirror effectively into a, you know, magic doorway or whatever. And if you go through it, you are in this other world. And they have different... I feel like it was probably one of the first, or if not the first, one of the first, like, really significant articles that did, like, an exploration log. And it's just these D-class that are consistently put through the mirror and then have these very otherworldly experiences. This article was written... like 14 years ago or something, and it's still so fucking good. I'm sure there are things in it that could be updated, but I like it so much, and Harry likes it so much that we've been writing a series that like further expands it, because it's just the best world building without many details. It's mostly implied what's going on in this other world, which is the best part.
I kept reading it like waiting for the exploration log that was going to be the big reveal of what is all going on, and that just doesn't come.
It doesn't, yeah.
I feel really weird saying this around Grigori, but 9.3 didn't always have an extensive exploration log.
Yeah, that's true.
And the first time I read it, way back when, it was a really short article, and it still was absolutely amazing. I'm pretty sure they edited it and added more.
Well, they did, but it's because those used to be separate articles.
Yeah, they used to be separate articles. They added it now, but it's always really weird to me because every time someone's like, "Oh yeah," and it adds this whole thing, and every time I'm like, "No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It was just a funny object, and they didn't say anything." So, but they did edit it, and it became major.
But those exploration logs were like updated, like right. If you look at the histories, they were right after the main line article, so they were always meant to be supplementary articles. Like they were part of the whole thing. It was one package. But I get what you're saying.
You know, I just find it really like strange. And the same thing happened to me with a bunch of other articles. There's a lot in the series 1 that they edited. Yeah, because at the time it wasn't a thing to just like either A, have it all done, or B, just add a second tale. So they did that to us. And I don't know, maybe that would be funny one day you're like, "Oh, I really like this SCP," and you come back to it like a year later and you're like, "When did it get longer?"
That was a good story. You got another one, or?
Fuck you, Grigori. Why are you so mean to me?
It's just
all the time.
Because I'm very fond of you, and this is how I express my affection. I don't know why that is, but it's true.
I'm not gonna talk anymore.
When I have 2 sisters, and we're really close, and at family gatherings, we don't really do that much socializing with other people at the family gatherings. We just kind of usually find a corner and find some booze. We're all adults. It's okay. And we just sit around and like make fun of other people, but also make fun of each other. And I've had like girlfriends or friends that come to family events and be truly horrified at the way that my sisters and I talk to each other. They're like, "Why are you that was mean." And it's like, "Why were you all laughing?" And it was like, "Cause, you know, I don't know. It's just we're broken. I'm not sure."
Yeah, I sometimes freak out at like how terrible I am at interactions because I've always done that a lot jokingly with like my mom and stuff. And it's so hard to remember not to do that when I'm meeting new people. And so I was very glad to have met Aiko and stuff who I can do that with and be very, very mean to. And it's all friendly.
No. It's the opposite. I kill people.
It's the opposite. Pause. I kill people.
Those are 2 separate confessions, by the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. There was a pause. I totally understand.
I just want to make sure for the listeners at home who love you to death.
Yeah, when you release this.
Why would you say that? I'm trying to make them feel like they are there. And
I'm gonna
whole
guilt
with
you
me.
so hard into releasing this so I can share it. Like,
We're
it's
never
not
gonna release
funny.
this.
Just so you
can't
know,
do
all
this.
our episodes are released. They are all
I
released.
know. This is a running joke. Jesus.
Learn to run a joke. Much.
Oh my god.
Learn to run a joke much.
He's
All right, I'm
never-
turning my eye towards you now.
Oh no.
Okay, yeah, you know what, guys? I think we should pause. I think we should pause the podcast. T-Staffor, I'm quitting. I'm quitting. I'm done.
Great, I'll take it
I'm
over.
right now.
This is my podcast
Oh
now.
my god.
I've never known the episode title so much as just then.
Oh, really? What is it?
Learn to take a joke much. learn to run a joke much.
That's really good. That's good.
I'm dead inside.
Well, we knew that.
I want to talk about something that isn't SCP for once.
We're done with SCP. You've bored us. We hate SCP now. We're not an SCP podcast anymore. Now we're a
Cool.
SCP authors books podcast.
I know.
I know, right?
It's so
This guy
funny.
couldn't have
Like,
picked
I'm
anything.
cheating. You're like, tell me about something you like that's not SCP, and I'm like, how about 2 books by people that you used to write a lot of SCPs?
Listen, guys, we had to make an exception for this guy because literally it's all he knows. He doesn't know anything. I don't think he's left the SCP community forever.
That's true.
He's addicted.
Yeah. Well.
Okay,
that's true.
so we were like, all right, it can be SCP authors, I guess.
What would have been absolutely incredible is if you just did There Is No Enigmametics Division. That's my favorite non-SCP thing. It's just a published book.
That would be very funny.
But what are
I
these
didn't do
books?
it.
What are these great, great books?
Right, so, first one is Featherlight by Jake A. Schaefer, who used to go by the name, and still does, Cadaver Commander, who did a whole bunch of SCPs, very, very funny, and very creepy articles, and he wrote this, I want to call it like a cyberpunk fantasy, sort of, but it's mostly just a detective story in this, like I said, cyberpunk fantasy sort of society. He does something with this book that I am so impressed with. There is a very common trope in fantasy or science fiction where the story will pause to then give you world building, right? Where the narrator or whoever literally pauses the action, conversation sometimes, and the next 3 paragraphs are just explaining something about the world. And I hate that so much. I want world building to be very organic, like within a dialogue. This book does it, and it pulls it off so well because there's such a sense of humor and character to the narrator that you just go along with it. And it's first person. It's from the perspective of this guy, whose last name is Featherlight, and he's a private detective, but he's also like a mutant, and he's also got magic powers, but his magic powers are not the magic powers you have read about in 1,000 different books. His powers are like biomancy. They're like life and biological connections, and they're way different than any magic I've ever read about. And there's so many aspects of this society that he has to stop and pause and explain to you, and the voice in which Cadaver Commander, or Jake Schaefer, knows how to like embody this character is just so fucking organic and funny and dark. You like really give a shit about this character because of the things that he's been through, that you just like okay, it's literally like somebody was telling you a story and then paused to be like, oh, and then 300 years ago the society did that. You know, it's like a history lesson in the middle of it, and yet it's never boring, and it's always really, really funny, and I highly recommend it. It's for sale. I've told a lot of people about it because, you know, I wanted to support previous SCP authors that are trying to publish books. And I would have bought it anyway just to support it. But I just finished reading it like a week and a half ago, and I just think it's fucking incredible. It's just a really good book.
Well, you sold me on it, actually. I could get it after
And
this.
I mean, if you've ever read a Cadaver Commander article, you should be somewhat trusting in the fact that he's right. Because he's really good at SCPs, and this is prose, so it's not SCP, but it is. Oh, it's really good.
I don't think I can remember the number of it, but I'm fairly sure Cadaver Commander's the one who did this one that's like about a diner where they just like casually cannibalize people, and it's got
I don't know
this.
if I've read that one.
It's got this
Probably-
great
I don't think you'd
audio
want
log.
Yeah, I
to.
don't want to
At the
because that
end.
is like my biggest phobia.
It's got this great audio log at the end of it where like just 2 of the coworkers on their like smoke break are just casually chatting, and they like are playing up that they really can't wait to hopefully be the next chosen for the meals or whatever. And it's just said so casually in such a great way.
You're scaring Grigori. You're scaring Grigori.
No.
Don't keep going.
It's really funny. She's not kidding. This is like my one weird thing. I have like a weird... I guess you wouldn't call it a phobia because it's not common enough, but I have a real weird problem with cannibalism. Like, it freaks me out. Naturally, I think it probably freaks almost everyone out.
It better.
It makes me so uncomfortable that I have stopped watching movies or reading books. Like, genuinely. Like, when someone... Like, I read a book a while ago, and there was a discussion in the book about the person being cut, like, on his face, and the blood was, like, sort of... Like, he was trapped, and the blood was, like, pouring into his mouth, and there's, like, a description of him, you know, having to swallow it in order to be able to catch his breath. And I literally stopped reading it. I don't know how that book ends. Because I just was like, nope, done.
Yes.
I'm done.
Burger King freaked me out.
I will threaten this man.
Which is an SCP tale, but that one freaked me out.
I threaten Grigori. I've told him countless times horrible things, and the one thing I will not step near, I won't even mention it by name around him, is that I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
And just because I'm scared of the repercussions, if I'm being
And
honest.
I wouldn't even be mad. I just would, like, all of a sudden you just wouldn't... I would be out of that conversation.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think of the movie I walked out of, but I've walked out of films, like, in the theater. And my problem is that I've always been a big fan of horror, and this is something that happens a lot in horror. And I actually think it's really tropey and boring, because people always use it to be like, oh, isn't this shocking? And it's like, yeah, we do this all the time. Cannibalism, we get it. But it also freaks me out, so... I don't know. I feel like it's the same thing with, like, weird fantasy or prestige TV shows that suddenly have, like, incest or something. It's like, why are we doing this? Like, you're just trying to shock people? Like, it's just... Is there more to this?
Speaking of high fantasy, I don't know about the incest part, but high fantasy...
There's no incest.
There you go. Good. What's this other book?
So, if anyone knows me... They will hear me and talk to me about SCP. They will hear me talk about Corbinic, or the Three Moons Initiative, which is pretty much entirely by an author called Dave U. Fool.
Which I had no idea about. I just knew Dave U. Fool from the, like, -J articles, which I absolutely adore.
Which are
but
great.
When I found out that also, like, all of Corbinic was also by Dave, that's incredible.
And I mean, you know, technically it's a GOI, and there are other people that have contributed to it, of course, but pretty much almost all of them are him. And they, you know, start in this, you know, we won't go deep into it because we're talking about something else, but they start, you know, kind of dark and horrific, and then they very quickly turn into, like, ludicrous and absurd comedy. And he took that tone and he applied it to a high fantasy novel called Neverstone the Mad Elf. Actually, he's written several of them. I'm reading the second one now. And I read it. I'm going to admit, he gave me a copy to see, you know, if I liked it. And if I liked it, could I write up, you know, something about it? That's what you do when you have a book. And pretty much from like 3 pages in, I was sold. Because it's just him. It's his voice. Even though it's not at all similar to the Corbinic stuff, this book is full of fourth wall breaks. And it's full of fourth wall breaks that then break the fourth wall more so. It's insane. The book is constantly just pausing to then tell the story from a different perspective. Like, here's a quote from a famous philosopher, which this quote, you know, not just quote, but an excerpt. The excerpt is perfectly on task for this subject, and it's super serious. And then it'll be like, the great Golantari and his favorite recipes. That's the book that it was from. And you're like, what? Or it'll be like a YouTube stream, not YouTube, but the equivalent in this world, a YouTube stream of the events. Like, he'll switch from talking in prose to suddenly describing, almost like in an SCP log, the events of like a transcript of a YouTube stream or something, of these events. And it's so funny. And it gets around being horribly violent because it's this really fairly violent story, but it operates on the logic of, like, a video game or a tabletop RPG where individuals who, kill a monster or do something else, they get experience and they get gold the way that you do in a game. And so that's how you get stronger. And then the rules of combat apply in the same way. So if you were to stab someone through the chest, maybe that would kill them, maybe that wouldn't, depending on how much HP they have.
Oh, that's great.
It's really good, and he doesn't get lost in it. The fight scenes are not like reading a D&D section. You don't, because at first when I figured out that was the trick, there was a moment where I was like, oh, this could get really lame, kind of dry to read. But he does it very quickly, and it's smooth as hell, and it's so funny, because he applies the logic of this world where certain people learn how to, become telekinetic, but with fencing, which is fucking hilarious to me. And then kind of extrapolates that to the most logical extreme. If you could use your mind to extend your, stabbing range because the sword flies out of your hands, well, why couldn't you twist it in the air like a helicopter and then slash through the face of a Colossus or a cyborg or so, not a cyborg, but a Cyclops, some big ass monster. And it's just, and it's just so funny. It really is genuinely hilarious. And there's a lot of really strong characters in it. Not every character is incredibly memorable, but almost everyone. There's a character who is just consistently delusional and clinically insane. And she is consistently hallucinating the world around her. And the pros will switch perspectives to taking her perspective. And then it's like reading a different book. And it's so funny. Because it's not even oh, isn't this crazy? No, it's all of a sudden a different book. And you have to be paying attention to understand who the equivalents are. When they talk about this character, that's actually this character. It's so...
just
and it
that far into a delusion that it's just completely other people.
That it even takes over the pros. It's great.
Yeah, that sounds great.
One of the things I actually need to purchase for myself.
Yeah, I highly recommend... I've been putting the links on all the episodes since I've read them on my podcast because I just want people to know. And, I'm also selfish in the sense that I want people to start accepting the fact that SCP authors can publish books and maybe get paid for it because I definitely want to go that route eventually. But also, these are just both fucking wonderful.
Well, I think...
Oh, and Elden Ring, but we've talked a lot.
Yeah.
So.
And Elden Ring, but it's not a... now that we've gone on two giant tangents.
You've tricked us.
Elden Ring.
You've brought us down.
Take it over.
You're turning this into how long your your non-existent radio wave show is.
Jeez. Good luck editing this one, buddy.
But let's wrap it up with one more final SCP. One that I absolutely adore, which is...
SCP-5866, the Named Snake, by my often collaborator and co-host on my podcast, Harry Blank. And I'm not just saying that because I like him. This is one of easily my favorite articles. It is charming. It is funny in parts. It's very sad in parts. It is a story about a 5-headed dragon. But it's not at all what you would expect on that basis. It plays around with the idea of reality and stories in this way that this is a Tiamat class SCP. So it's the object class Tiamat, which is one of those expanded ones that I never use. But it's also Tiamat like the goddess from, I think, Ancient Babylon. And it's also Tiamat, the understanding of how a 5-headed dragon is a Tiamat in Dungeons & Dragons. And all those things are true.
There's a lot of articles that use the meta discussion of esoteric classes in the article, and I think this does this one of the best out of any of those. Easily. With the edited in notes from the two kind of main researchers arguing over it.
It's brilliant, and it looks like, and you can easily follow the path of the conversation because it's really just two people and they're color coded. And you can see this conversation between each addendum or between the comprox and the description, or even sometimes just in the middle of an addendum, there'll be this burst of dialogue that is in these very specific little divs that break it out in different colors. I think it's green and red. I can't remember off the top of my head, actually. And it's just the conversation about, at first, whether or not, is this really a Tiamat object class? Which is kind of a whole meta commentary on how people get really intensely into what the classification of an SCP is, which is really funny because I don't even think about them, nor do I care. But people really do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this article does a really fun thing of not only poking fun at that, but also taking it so seriously that it justifies it, which is kind of the... Harry is just capable of doing these things where an article will do like 3 different things, because this is, on the one hand, a story about someone who is trying to face mortality, who is dying, and trying to make her lasting impact on the world, is a story about someone who is out so ostracized from society, the dragon, that the only point of contact becomes the most important relationship in their existence. And it's also kind of a story about SCP, like about the wiki in some ways. And like you said, the object class and what we think about, the process that we as authors think about when we go in to write these articles, knowing that there will be people that take it so seriously and we want to have answers for them. And it's just, I don't know how he did it. It's all these things. It's hilarious. It's sad. It's a story about fucking with, different meanings of the word Tiamat, and that's not even a word I think I've ever said out loud before.
and by far, like, if you had to ask me what the top final line of any article is, this takes the cake by far. Its final line is so good.
It's incredible. He does that a lot. It's very impressive. I'm not sure how he manages it, honestly. And I've been talking to him pretty much nonstop since he joined the community, and we are like close and talk every day. And we talk at length about creative projects that we're working on. And he somehow still surprises me coming up with some of the most consistently funny or poignant or both ending lines to articles. And he does it all the time, and I sort of hate him for it. But I'm also very impressed by it.
Listen, this Harry guy, he's my friend, but he's also a genius. He's so good at overarching stories and adding plot twists and making everything fit together, and I'm like so jealous, and this is a really good example of that. All of his stuff is really I'm particularly more on the OG-43 side of things, but this was like a smaller, digestible one.
Yeah, this one you don't have, and Aiko's right. This, Harry does these overarching stories, but this article especially, and honestly most of his articles, at least the main list ones, will stand on their own entirely. And this one, you will never be required to read anything else he's ever written to understand perfectly why maybe you should be reading everything.
Yeah, this was the first Harry Blank article I ever read, and it got me hooked. And I've read a ton of Harry Blank stuff.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of very much well-deserved support. I mean, it's like 325 now. I mean, it's just such an incredible article. I don't know, it's just really impressive that somebody could do an overarching story in SCP. I've certainly never done that.
And you never will.
You never will.
I have done that. You just haven't read it.
No, you never will, because your time is up, and you'll be fed to those alligators. We'll drop you in the pit.
Oh, cool. Thank God.
We have this big funny red button that says "Do not push it." When we push it, you will fall into a pit.
Why would it say "Do not push it" if you intend to push it?
Because every guest we bring on has like tremendous problems.
Yeah, they have bad trust issues because they think we're gonna kill them, and so they try and kill us. So it's really hard to kill them a lot of the time.
This is like the plot of an anime.
Yeah, well, don't say that about us ever again, please. That hurt.
Okay, you're right.
Please.
It's like the plot of a Japanese light novel.
Thank you.
That's so much better. Thank God.
Yeah, those are basically like longer animes. Sorry.
Okay, off to the crocodiles.
Yep. That's it. I've had enough.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and as we say at the end of every episode...
I don't know. This is my first episode.
This is my first episode.
And here we have it. This is his first episode.
That's what we say every time. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night. That was horrible. I didn't record any of it.